I think that there are two things really for me that I have to recognize. And I think one is it's not just the second chair, but it's also being a female.
But one of the things that I have found to be really important is connecting the value that I'm trying to communicate with them with something that I know that they already value.
Thank you, Pastor, for that lesson. That's really, really important. Wow. Hey friends, welcome to Grow Together. I'm so excited. This is Saehee and I'm with Lainey here, my co-host. Lainey, how are you doing?
Doing good, doing great. I'm wrapping up my semester. I know we were talking about classes a second ago. I turned in my last paper for this year. So feeling really good about that.
Ooh, I'm so proud of you and I want to be just like you. I have a few things that I need to do, but so you're in my inspiration. Yeah, you know, the fall is just beginning and it's just around the corner and we have so many things to do. And so sometimes it's easy for us to forget about the big call that God has for us. But do you remember, Lainey, the moment that God called you to ministry?
My goodness, you know, I do, but I would say it was more than one moment. I think for me, it was a progression of moments that the Lord just set up throughout my life. So it was a long process and many years of discernment. But yeah, it was special, continual promptings from the Lord that brought me here. And I'm sure there's more to see yet, but.
Yeah, absolutely. And God does that layer by layer, like an onion. To some people, he does it. And sometimes, so to some people, he would do it like me. He called me 18 years ago and said, Saehee, you're going to be a minister on your own right someday. That someday took me like 15 years, you know, so, but the promise was there and I'm keep going back to the promise. But throughout that process and the journey, I found myself often leading from the second chair. Like I know that God gave me this divine call to lead, but the leading as the, you know, in the first seat didn't happen right away. Do you find yourself in that season?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think from the last several years of life, I found myself sitting in both seats from time to time. Currently, I do sit and serve in a role that would be more second chair. And I think there is such value to that and such a unique opportunity that we have to grow and to learn and to still lead out of strength and health as we contribute to the directional influence of a team and to our leader, whether that's a lead pastor or, you know, a leader of an organization.
Absolutely. The spirit of collaboration and teamwork is so important, no matter the seat or no matter the role that we play. But I think this conversation is important because we're not the only one, right? We're not the only one leading from the second chair. So I think it will be awesome to invite some guests and your friends to continue this conversation. So who would that be?
Yes, I would love to. So today, you guys are going to be meeting two pastors that have been huge key influences in my life and have made a really big impact for me. So you will meet Pastor Amanda Berger, who is a longtime friend of mine. We actually met at our ministerial credentialing interviews. So really fun background and story there. She serves and pastors in Midtown Church in Kansas City. And then I also get to introduce you to a little bit of my world here in Massachusetts, Pastor Brynn Harrington. And she is the lead pastor at one of the High Rock churches in High Rock North Shore. So I'm very excited to have you guys get to know both of them.
All right. Well, then without a further ado, let's introduce and invite our pastors, Pastor Amanda and Pastor Brynn. How are you doing?
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So exciting. And it's always good to meet some new friends, especially from my trusted friend like Lainey. And she introduced some cool friends like you two. And we get to share you with hundreds and thousands of our other ministers. So it's pretty cool. I like this new season of collecting new friends. So we were just talking about leading from the second seat. And I think you both either are serving or have served in that role. And so there's a lot of things that we can talk about. There's even a book, Lainey. Did you guys know that there is a book by this title? Like leading from the second seat, you know?
I did, yeah.
The authors were Mike Bonem and Roger Patterson. If any of you guys would like to pick it up and for your resource, it will be a great insight that you want to glean from. So we have several questions we want to ask you and really learn and grow together. Why don't you, Lainey, just kick us off with the first question that's really, really important?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first thing I wanted to know, especially Amanda, for you right now, serving as an associate pastor in this season, how would you define that role and that opportunity that you have right now, leading from the second chair?
Yeah, so currently I am working with a church plant. So all my church planters out there, you get what I'm talking about. So a lot of it, for job duties wise, it looks a little bit piecemealed, right? Like we are putting things together as we go. And in some ways, it's the catch-all. I have designated areas that I oversee. I get to help share with the teaching calendar. But even more than that, I get to help develop leaders. And really, when I think about what it means to be in the second chair as the associate pastor, I think it means raising the arms of my lead pastors. It is coming alongside them, helping them know, are we taking our Sabbath? Are we having healthy boundaries here, not only for them, but within the team, keeping a pulse on team dynamics, and as we navigate, just really trying to be a support in those things. And so that does cause job duties to change, and I love that. I love getting to kind of have my hands in different buckets, and really just coming along and supporting their vision and helping them actualize that.
Yeah. As a lead pastor myself, I cherish, and I mean it when I said I cherish those that are lifting my hands up, literally. Leading our church and ministry during this pandemic, man, it's been so difficult. And there's an article, many actually, talking about how many pastors are just really quitting ministry during this pandemic. Already as is, there's a high turnover in pastoral ministry, but during this pandemic, it just really heightened that number. So it's like pastors like Pastor Amanda, and other associate pastors that are really coming alongside lead pastors, say, don't give up. We got the mission to go. And so they kind of like check me in, so keep me in the right track. So I appreciate you, Pastor Amanda, for your role. Pastor Brynn, what do you think? What is your definition of leading from the second chair?
I totally second everything that Amanda said. I think that idea of holding up the arms of the lead pastor and really supporting the vision of the church and the mission of the church is so, so essential. So everything that Amanda said, I agree with. I was a second chair leader for most of my ministry career. So it's something that I have had to think a lot about as I've even transitioned into a lead pastor role. And as someone who had to, serve a different person's vision, how do I now help people who work for me also feel like they're valued and like their voices are important in the collaborative effort of our church? So it's a joint effort, I think.
That's so true. It is a teamwork. And I think we keep saying that word, collaboration and teamwork, because we're leading side by side, no matter the titles, lead pastor, associate pastor. We can't do one or the other without each other. That's so good. Well, I'm going to ask Pastor Amanda this question. What unique dynamics have you experienced as a second chair leader? You can be totally honest, because you're representing many female ministers sitting in that exact role. Maybe you want to share some burdens, maybe some wins. What are some of the positives and negatives of leading in the second chair?
Yeah, so I think that there are two things really for me that I have to recognize. And I think one is it's not just the second chair, but it's also being a female pastor. And both of those things have unique dynamics to them. So when you put them together, they come with additional unique sets of challenges and opportunities, honestly. For me, I'm so thankful to serve under lead pastors that are sincere in their approach, and they really prioritize decentralizing leadership. So really working on collaborating, making sure that people's voices are heard, and it's not just a top-down thing, but it's very much a level thing. And so I'm extremely thankful for that example, and I really think that that is an example we can see in the Bible as well of how to do that. So I'm very appreciative of that, being able to have, input and really know that when I speak up about something, whether it's a concern or an idea, that it's really being taken under consideration. But I will say, church planning comes with its challenges. Currently, I serve under co-lead pastors, so a husband and wife. And so that also throws in a unique dynamic of, they're figuring out what that looks like for our church, because co-lead pastors, anybody out there, that looks differently for each set, each couple, each church. That dynamic is being figured out. So to have that, and then also have a third pastor in the mix, as the associate, does at times require extra clarification on who is overseeing what. So for our team, to make sure that there's no not too much confusion and who do I report to, how does this work, we really have to be intentional about how we are communicating and clarifying our roles and who is overseeing what dynamic. And, honestly, having some of the unique challenges of, as a second chair, I want to help people, as a church plant, help people know, okay, these are our lead pastors and they are our shepherds, but then also at the same time balancing, but I'm a pastor too, and I'm also here to shepherd. So helping balance those things, lifting up the pastors and also rightfully demonstrating leadership and assisting in pastoring there, I think would be the number one unique challenge that we're currently navigating at church.
That's really cool. My husband and I also left for a time as co-lead pastors, and we still function that way. So what you said is really important, Pastor Amanda, because it does bring the need for clarification. My husband and I, we've served. I mean, if you're married, you've met in ministry, you've been leading, it's kind of second nature to you. Oh yeah, you do that, you do that. And so we have a mutual understanding within our marriage. Okay, this is our roles and function. But we forget that people don't realize that. People don't understand what is your role, what is, who makes the final call and that kind of thing. So yeah, thank you so much. And I'm sorry to my congregation that I brought so much confusion to you. Thank you, Pastor, for that lesson. That's really, really important. Wow. Lainey, you have another question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think both Amanda and Brynn touched on this a little bit, and it's that value of inspiring vision. Right. And so I think, Brynn, you sit as lead pastor now spearheading that vision in many ways. And Amanda, you sit, as we've talked about, and Brynn mentioned, as someone who still is actively engaging in that vision and the contribution of that to the church. But Brynn, share with us a little bit as lead pastor, how do you cultivate this engagement from your team, this inspiration towards a vision, while still sharing in that collaborative process and inspiring out-of-the-box thinking as you guys navigate what that looks like for the church?
Yeah, it's a huge question. I have been the lead pastor for less than a year, so this is something that I am actively learning. But one thing that our youth pastor, I had a conversation with our youth pastor maybe, 3 months ago, that she said something that was so meaningful to me. She said, I don't always agree with every decision that you make or understand every decision that you make, but I trust you. And to me, trust is such an important commodity. I actually have to practice what I preach. I have to live out the values that I say that are values of our church. And I need the people who work with me to see those things lived out in my life. And so the fact that she trusts me is essential to me. And I think trust is built incredibly slowly and lost very quickly. And so I just want to, take a lot of time when I'm trying to kind of shift a vision or cast a vision, that people will trust me in the process and that I'm a trustworthy person and a trustworthy pastor. So that's part of it. I think prayer is a big part of it, inviting people to pray with me about things. Jesus changes hearts. God changes hearts. And so when we invite people to pray big prayers and say, let's think outside the box together, but first we're going to go through a season of prayer together. That's essential because it shows that we're in this together and people aren't submitting to me and my vision. We're submitting to Jesus and to Christ's church. Yeah. And so inviting people to join me in following Jesus is way better than asking them to follow me and my vision. That's the only way that it will work. I think another thing that I've learned, and actually, Lainey, when you said that you were going to ask me this question, I was like, oh, this is perfect timing, because I had a conversation with a group of lay leaders in our church yesterday who are incredibly invested. They're not on my staff team, but they are influencers in our church, and so they really have a say in what we do. But they want to do something a little bit differently from what I want. And so I've actually spent a full year trying to work with them and help them to tweak a little bit in the direction that I hope that the church will go. So again, that's a slow process. But one of the things that I have found to be really important is connecting the value that I'm trying to communicate with them with something that I know that they already value. So one of the guys in this group values nothing more than his kids knowing Jesus. And so connecting the vision of the church with his kids knowing Jesus has been absolutely key for helping him understand why I want to move in the direction that I want to move. So that's been really, really important for us.
That's good. That's great, Brynn. I mean, I think our values are what drive us, right? And as we submit, like you said, I love that you said that, because you're so right. We submit those values, and they should be birthed out of that prayerful interaction and relationship with the Lord. Mm-hmm. And it's not just, us trying to push forth some engineered vision for the church. It's really all of us coming together to the Lord and saying, what do you have for the church in this season? What does that look like? And then finding ways to do that together. I think that's so true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very great wisdom. So here's the next question, and it's for both of you. Has your time in the second chair influenced the way you lead now? Maybe Pastor Brynn can kind of speak on to, because you're already in a lead pastoral role. But for Pastor Amanda, maybe speak on to about what you're learning for the moment when God calls you to step up and maybe he may call you to lead pastor one day. But so what are you preparing during this process for whenever that call may come? So Pastor Brynn, kick us off with that.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked for 17 different pastors, and some of them are really, really, they have had a lot of integrity with their values, the way, like I was saying, with the way that they lived and the values that they communicated for our church. And some of them didn't. And when you're not living that way, when you're inconsistent with who you are, people lose that trust in you. And so I have really made it a point to cultivate my own walk with Jesus, my own walk with Christ, and to show that to people. I want people to see where I make mistakes. I want them to see where I fail. I want to apologize. I want to ask for forgiveness. And then I want people to see me leading where I'm gifted and strong, and have that just be consistent in my character. And so I think working so closely with so many pastors who, I didn't always see that integrity, and then seeing what it looks like to see that integrity, it makes a massive difference in how we work as a team and how we operate. So I think that's been a big thing. I appreciated, Amanda, what you said about as a second chair, just making sure that we are resting and that we are taking the Sabbath and we're taking good care of our emotional and spiritual health, physical health, all of that. And so I think because that was my role for so long for so many other people, to encourage them to be healthy in their habits, I'm also doing that for myself now, which is a gift. I have people reminding me to do that on my team. But because I was the little reminder button for so many people, I have cultivated that in my own life. So when people on my team are now not taking a Sabbath or not resting or overworking, I can remind them that it's a value for our church and it's a value for me, and I don't expect them to burn themselves out. So I think it makes me a healthier, more loving leader.
That's good. Mutually edifying. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pastor Amanda.
Yeah, I love that. I echo a lot of what Brent is saying as far as, you want to lead by example, right? And so having lead pastors that are setting that example. I'm also working in setting that example and prioritizing first and foremost. I think that just naturally flows out of your individual walk with Christ, and that will bleed into your leadership and everything else that you are doing. And definitely, being the person who's reminding, like, hey, are we doing Sabbath? I have to remind myself too, hey, I'm not just reminding other people to Sabbath. This is something I want to keep and maintain for myself as well. So definitely echo a lot of what Pastor Brynn said there. And, for me as well, it is learning just kind of to a certain extent, like systems and how to get a vision across to a team and get people on board with those things and picking up kind of the nuance on it. But also serving in a second chair gives me, with pastors that I trust and trust me, does give me the freedom to develop who is Amanda as a pastor and leader, while also maintaining who is Amanda. So a lot of times I think it's easy to fall into, this is what we expect of a pastor. This is what we expect of this role, or this leader. And we try to, as leaders, mold into that. And I think to a certain extent that's good, but we can also lose our God-given talents and God-given personality. And so making sure that I am still staying true to who God made me to be, while also serving in those roles, is something that I am really challenged by and working to maintain and exemplify for others that are on our team that are also feeling the pressure of having responsibility and therefore losing some of themselves to that, and trying to help everyone understand that we don't all have to be any of the people out there I'm about to throw there. We don't all have to be 8s or 3s. We don't have to be challengers or achievers. We can be true to who God made us to be, while still being excellent leaders that are exemplifying Christ's walk on this earth. So that for me is a big thing that I am learning and working to exemplify in my leadership.
You reminded me of something. Can I add something else too?
Sure.
Yeah, I think along with all of that kind of learning who you are as a leader too, I think I have, because I have worked with so many pastors who have developed me, I really consider my role as developing others now too. And, you know, obviously I'm still being developed. I have many mentors who are pouring into my life. But I think as someone who could claim the microphone in the pulpit 100% of the time if I wanted to, it is a huge gift. And I know and have felt that it's a gift for people who I've worked for in the past to get out of the way so that I can practice and develop and get to know who I am as a leader. And so I see part of my role now as doing that, cultivating other leaders, so that by the time God calls them to a lead role, if that's their calling, that they have had a lot of experience, a lot of feedback, a lot of practice in becoming the leaders that they're intended to be.
That's good. Creating space, intentional space for them to fully live out the calling in a safe place. I think that's a beauty of leading from the second chair. Actually, you know, when I was an associate pastor, I mean, I felt like, oh, we could do this, we could do that. You know, I can dream as big as we want, but I don't have to pay the consequences, pay the price for the consequences. But being a lead pastor is a completely different role, really. You have a heavier responsibility, other things that I didn't really care about or wasn't aware of. And those are the things that I've learned through my journey. We really both need each other. Like you guys were talking about, lead pastors creating space for associate pastors to rise up and lead side by side. And also associate pastors lifting their arms, but also encourage them to continue to cast vision and lead together. Man, what a teamwork. This is so beautiful.
Yeah,
I think it's so great. Alaina, do you have any final questions?
I mean, I would just ask you guys, last but not least, as we've talked about all of these different things, we talked about our circle of leadership, what this looks like. Do you have any final thoughts, any last remaining things you'd want to leave us with in regards to just maybe even just the wins of leading together?
Yeah, I think for me, I would just encourage anybody who's finding themselves in a second chair role, associate pastor, be honest and find time to have conversations with your lead pastors, and be honest about what you're looking to grow in, what you're looking for accountability in, what your dreams and your goals are for the future, what the Lord has laid on your heart and you feel Him calling you to, and just be honest with them and open those dialogues. I think that's really the first step in being able to have a good partnership and good teamwork as pastors, to be able to have those conversations candidly and just see what the Lord does from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah.
I would add one image actually from that Leading from the Second Chair book that really stuck with me, especially when I was serving in a second chair role, was there was a conductor of an orchestra who said, you know, everybody wants to be the first chair violinist. No one wants to be the second chair violinist because they don't get to be in the spotlight. And it actually takes more skill sometimes to be a second chair violinist, because you have to be as good as the first chair, and you also have to know how to support someone else. And that takes a kind of strength and humility that is really, really hard for a lot of first chair leaders. And so being a second chair leader is not a second class role. It is a essential role that takes a lot of gifting and passion and skill. And one of the scripture passages that I've really identified with, and that is Philippians 2. When you look at Jesus, obviously is equal with God, right? And still chose to humble himself.
Yeah.
And that is where he was elevated. And so I think that humility is such a beautiful trait and such a Christ-like quality. We really get to understand and experience what Christ did for us in the second chair role in a really profound way.
That's good. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of first chair leaders who won't want to lead without the second chair leaders. Really. I'm one of them. I don't want to lead my church or my ministry without my team. I don't think I can do it. I shouldn't. Really. Yeah. So yeah, that's great insight. Pastor Brynn, Pastor Amanda, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your passion. I just felt that love for people and love for the church. Keep on doing what you're doing. And we love you guys. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. God bless you. Wow, Lainey, what a conversation. So many things that I learned. What stood out to you?
I loved Amanda's initial comment about clarity. And then with Pastor Brynn following up with trust, because I think they go hand in hand. Yeah. Right. So I think clarity is probably the less talked about commodity of leadership. I think it's maybe sounds less glamorous, right, than some of the other things that we harp on as leaders. But clarity is crucial to the success of our teams and to just successful interactions interpersonally. And so part of making a pathway and space for clarity is having established trust. And so I just think that with those two things combined together in a team, we really are primed to be able to hold one another up and lead in ways that reflect the kingdom of God accurately and impactfully for the community.
Yeah, that's so good. Clarity, transparency.
Yeah,
clarity and transparency for this second and first chairs to work together. And we have to, because we're submitting to Jesus Christ. One of my dear mentors told me that you cannot be in authority unless you're under authority. And that under authority, I think he was talking about under Jesus. We all need to submit to him, which Pastor Brynn talked about that. Yeah. I love this conversation. Thank you, Lainey, for your amazing, incredible friends. You're such a cool friend with cool other friends.
I'm so lucky.
And so am I, to meet all of that. So cool. Hey, friends, thank you so much for joining us. And I hope that this conversation inspired you to lead from any position. First seat, second seat, we all need to bring our 100% of the game. So just say yes to and amen to God's call wherever you're at. And until then, continue to follow us on our social media at AG Women Minister. Let's keep on growing. We love you guys and see you later.
Bye, guys.